The United States imports more than 2,000 tons of this bright green matcha powder from Japan each year. This powder is the highest quality and most expensive version of matcha, known as ceremonial matcha. This is the type typically used in Japanese tea ceremonies, not the cheaper versions or matcha grown outside Japan. But the irony is that as matcha craze reaches new heights in the United States, more people are buying this premium matcha. Matcha becomes increasingly scarce worldwide, and prices skyrocket to new record levels. What was once a uniquely Japanese cultural drink has become a global craze. And the pressure is pushing Japan's entire matcha growing system to the brink of collapse. Farmers can't keep up. Climate disasters are devastating Kyoto's tea fields every year. The workforce is aging. Production methods are slow, traditional, and unscalable. And yet, despite all this, Western consumers continue to demand the most refined, labor-intensive matcha for drinks that are often laced with sugar, syrup, and milk. Why is matcha so expensive and getting more expensive? And are Americans really drinking matcha all wrong? Because if so, they may be inadvertently exacerbating the global matcha shortage they're complaining about. Why is it so expensive? Matcha today is not just expensive, it is becoming one of the world's most perishable luxury ingredients. Prices have hit record highs. Japanese farmers are struggling to recover from climate disaster, and global demand continues to outstrip Japan's ability to produce. But behind this economic story lies another truth. Consumers are frustrated by social media hype, misinformation, poor quality testing, and the proliferation of fake matcha flooding the market. Here's the big picture of why matcha is getting more expensive and why consumers are increasingly frustrated. First, because demand is exploding. Supply can't keep up. Ceremonial grade matcha, the most delicate, labor-intensive, and difficult to scale matcha, can only be made from young spring leaves harvested once a year. That's the entire global supply. Just one harvest. But the problem is that Americans love premium tea for everything: lattes, gelato, mochi, even sugary milkshakes. And since the US now accounts for 80% of Japan's matcha exports, that preference alone puts a huge strain on the system. What's more, once matcha is mixed with milk, syrup, or blended into milkshakes, the quality of the ceremonial tea is no longer palpable. Yet people still pay for ceremonial tea, creating waste and unnecessary demand. Japan can't produce more. First harvest. Tea leaves. There's no way to expand the schedule. Demand skyrockets while supply remains unchanged, driving up prices. The second reason is extreme climate. Kyoto's tea fields are burning. In 2024, extreme heat waves burned the tea fields in Kyoto. Entire tencha plantations, the raw material for matcha, were destroyed. The damage is not just temporary. Once a tencha field burns, it takes up to 5 years to fully recover. And because premium tea depends on perfect conditions, not just acceptable ones, even small climatic anomalies reduce the total number of usable tea leaves. Every heat wave, every drought, every late frost instantly reduces global supply and pushes prices up. The third reason is aging farmers, a declining workforce. Matcha growers in Japan are aging rapidly. Most tea farmers are in their 60s and 70s, and the younger generation is not taking over. This is a long-term structural crisis. Without labor, Japan cannot expand matcha production, even if demand doubles. No labor means less tea leaves, which leads to less harvest, a tighter supply, which ultimately leads to higher prices. The fourth reason is that traditional production costs are extremely high. Matcha is slow because it is made by hand. Farmers have to install extremely expensive shading systems weeks before harvest. Tea leaves must be steamed, dried, and destemmed with precision, and grinding tencha into matcha still relies on stone mills, which only produce about 100,004 ounces per hour. You can't make them spin faster because the friction will ruin the flavor. The process is not scalable. You can't industrialize it without destroying the very qualities people paid for. The fifth reason is that tencha prices are at record highs. All of this has pushed raw tencha prices to about $25 per pound, the highest they've ever been, as raw materials skyrocket. Every box of ceremonial tea on the shelves doubles or triples in price. The sixth reason is that US import tariffs make matcha even more expensive. The new tariffs imposed by the US have added an unavoidable cost. Ceremonial matcha already has high farming, labor, and production costs, with tariffs added on top. The final price at cafes and grocery stores will increase even more. Before matcha became a global obsession, it lived almost entirely inside the world of Chinoyu, the Japanese tea ceremony. For centuries, matcha wasn't a daily drink, but a cultural ritual prepared slowly, shared with intention, and practiced mainly by tea masters, monks, and members of the aristocracy. Outside this community, most Japanese people rarely consumed matcha at all. Even in modern times, Japan never viewed matcha as a mass-market beverage. In the early 2000s, the country exported only 1% of its tea, and ceremonial matcha was a tiny fraction of that. For Americans, matcha was nearly impossible to find and even harder to enjoy. Early descriptions in newspapers and travel diaries called it bitter, grassy, unpalatable, and even compared it to pea soup. In other words, matcha wasn't popular, wasn't accessible, and wasn't designed for global taste buds. But from 2010 onward, matcha in the United States shifts from niche curiosity to full cultural phenomenon. Google Trends shows a steady climb for more than a decade, finally peaking in 2025, marking the highest interest in matcha ever recorded. And with that demand comes enormous pressure on Japan. By 2024-2025, the US alone accounts for nearly 80% of all Japanese matcha exports, a level no other country even comes close to. In cities like New York, cafes dedicated entirely to matcha begin popping up, most famously Ayoko Matcha, where the entire menu uses ceremonial grade sourced directly from Japan. These aren't casual customers. Many are self-declared matcha connoisseurs, hopping from cafe to cafe just to compare flavor profiles, bitterness levels, and shades of green. And they're willing to pay premium prices for the experience. What started as a trend becomes a full-scale obsession. And Japan struggles to keep up. Matcha isn't just a drink anymore. It has become a full cultural identity. One reason it spread so quickly across the US is its positioning as a clean caffeine source. Unlike coffee, which delivers a sharp spike and crash, matcha contains L-theanine, a natural compound that produces calm, sustained energy. Wellness communities embrace it as the smarter, steadier alternative to espresso shots and sugary cold brews. For gym-goers, students, influencers, and health-conscious professionals, matcha becomes the new productivity ritual. But its rise doesn't stop at drinks. Matcha blends seamlessly into modern dessert culture. You find it in iced matcha lattes, soft-serve cones, gelato, mochi, cakes, croissants, donuts, and even matcha tiramisu. Versions sold in boutique cafes. Its vibrant color makes it instantly Instagrammable. Its earthy flavor gives chefs something bold to experiment with. Matcha doesn't just taste good, it looks good. This leads to the next catalyst: aesthetic lifestyle culture. On TikTok, Instagram, and especially Matcha Talk, creators post saturated green drinks, slow-motion whisk shots, morning matcha routines, study with me, matcha aesthetics, and comparisons between ceremonial and culinary grades. The visuals are addictive. A perfect swirl of green foam performs better online than a cup of black coffee, and influencers know it. The trend loops back into real life. What people watch becomes what they buy. And as the wellness movement expands, matcha positions itself as a cleaner, healthier coffee alternative. It's dairy-friendly, vegan-friendly, and pairs easily with almond milk, oat milk, or even high-protein shakes. For people trying to cut caffeine jitters, reduce anxiety, or avoid sugary energy drinks, matcha becomes the obvious replacement. The result is a perfect storm: wellness culture, social media aesthetics, food innovation, and a global shift toward healthier caffeine. Matcha doesn't simply appear everywhere. It becomes woven into daily life. That's why matcha is so expensive. Japan knows its matcha industry is under pressure, and the government has begun taking direct action to protect it. One of the biggest efforts is a national subsidy program that helps farmers transition their fields to tencha, the raw leaf used specifically for matcha. By financially supporting this shift, Japan hopes to increase the supply of ceremonial-grade raw material without placing additional burdens on aging farmers. Authorities are also encouraging the expansion of matcha growing regions, pushing production beyond traditional centers like Kyoto. The goal is to build resilience. If one region suffers climate damage, others can continue supplying the market. There are early signs of hope. A small but growing number of young Japanese farmers are returning to tea cultivation, inspired by heritage, sustainability, and rising global demand. But even with new blood and government support, one challenge remains unpredictable: Japan's increasingly harsh climate, where a single heat wave can erase years of progress. In the end, matcha isn't just expensive, it's vulnerable. What looks like a simple green powder hides an entire ecosystem of farmers, traditions, climate risks, and cultural misunderstandings. And when you break it all down, the reason matcha has become so costly is surprisingly straightforward. Demand is exploding faster than Japan can grow the leaves. Climate change is burning tea fields that take 5 years to recover. Traditional production methods are slow, delicate, and impossible to industrialize without destroying quality. Aging farmers leave fewer hands to maintain a craft that depends on precision and experience. A global supply crunch pushes raw tencha prices to all-time highs, and new U.S. import tariffs add an extra layer of cost on top of everything else. Put together, these forces create the perfect storm, driving matcha prices higher year after year. As matcha becomes more popular, one truth often gets lost in the hype: ceremonial grade isn't always necessary. This is the rarest, most delicate form of matcha, meant to be enjoyed on its own, not drowned in milk, syrups, or blended into sugary lattes. When we use ceremonial matcha the wrong way, we're not just wasting money, we're wasting the time, labor, and care of the farmers who produce it. And that's why respect matters. Respect the farmer who shades each leaf by hand. Respect the tradition that has survived centuries. And respect the difference between quality meant for savoring and quality meant for mixing. Because no matter how mainstream it becomes, matcha is still a luxury product, fragile, climate sensitive, labor intensive, and increasingly expensive. Prices may continue rising as demand grows and Japan struggles to protect its harvests. Why is it so expensive? If you find this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment on what topic you would like me to cover in the next video. See you next time!